Hey, y'all, it's Michelle with SLP Full Disclosure. Thank you guys for joining us today. We are joined today by a very inspiring woman who I have just had the absolute pleasure of getting to meet and speak with only once, and I cannot wait for our conversation today. We are joined by Miss Denise Cesare. Denise, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm so excited to get talking about everything.
Yes, and we have got so much to talk about. So, Denise is obviously a speech language pathologist, but she's also a published author and a prominent figure in the realms of mindfulness, education, and kindness. I love that. And so, those are the things that we're going to be talking about today, but we're also going to be talking about her life and her journey. In 2006, she was in a tragic car accident, which resulted in her losing her voice. So, as a speech language pathologist, we can all recognize that that was devastating not only to her personally, but professionally. So, we're going to talk about all of those challenges, how she overcame that, and how she came to be a published author. And we're so excited to have you here today, Denise. So
Oh,
excited.
exciting! So exciting! This is our thing. We're here today we're both SLPs together.
Yes, we are. So before we get started, I want to read Denise's bio because I want you guys to get a good picture of who she is. She is such an amazing woman. Denise is a published author, keynote speaker, and social emotional learning specialist, focusing her efforts to serve the needs of schools, organizations, and communities. Understanding mental health crises and subsequent issues that arise with limited resources to help, she quickly recognized the need for providing the tools and coping mechanisms to make fundamental changes starting at a young age. Denise's first book was born out of this very need. In 2020, she quickly recognized that many children were not coping well with the experience of being quarantined in a pandemic, and many craved guidance during this very confusing time. While working daily with them, her book, Moments in Motion with Love, poured out of her. This book illustrates the beauty of every moment, celebrates our children, and brings forth their significant connection to our planet. It is a book to start a conversation with parents and educators to heal the stress that our children are feeling. Many adult communities use the book as a resource for coping with their own stressors. Denise has worked as a speech language pathologist and special education social emotional specialist for over 25 years, earning two master's degrees. In 2006, she lost her voice due to a condition called spasmodic dysphonia from a major car accident. Through treatment and a whole lot of faith, she has been able to regain her voice. Since that time, much has come to surface for her about the meaning of life, the importance of being present, the gift every moment offers, and the power love has to heal. Combining her vast education, continued learning, and personal experience, Denise delivers research backed talks on regulating emotions, mindfulness education, and kindness initiatives. Denise was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, and currently resides in Staten Island with her husband, Dan. She has an amazing son, Daniel, working and living in Pennsylvania. Wow. What a bio, Denise. You have done so many wonderful things, and I'm so excited to get into this topic today. I think as we're coming up on Speech and Hearing Month, it's so important as speech pathologists that we take time for ourselves. And we don't do that because we're always pouring into others. We're pouring into our students that we serve, our families that we work with, and we don't take time for ourselves. So I really want to start with that. How can how can we bring this mindfulness to our professions as speech language pathologists every day? And why is that important?
Well, it's so important because when we're burnt out, then we can't give of ourselves, right? So I believe even though it's hard, we really, even if we take a moment out of the day to regroup, to ground ourselves, to take a breath, even between sessions. I'm talking the speech language pathologist language. We have sessions while you're
Mhm.
walking either through the hallway or waiting for your next client. Take a moment to take deep breaths, even if it's for seconds, that will reset your heart. It's not just your brain, your heart, your mind, your soul, all of that. So I think you really have to make a conscious effort. I believe in mindfulness, but I have to practice what I preach. I have to actually say to myself, what do I need to do today to get through this, maybe a challenging day?
Right, because if we're not our best selves, we can't give our best selves. And I think that as speech language pathologists, I talked in my last podcast about serving, and we serve our children and we serve our families and we serve our patients if we're in a medical setting. We're constantly giving and giving and giving of ourselves, and oftentimes our own personal needs kind of get set to the wayside. And we all always have heard, don't sweat the small stuff.
Hmm.
But today in this podcast, we're going to talk about not how to sweat the small stuff, because we shouldn't sweat the small stuff, but we need to notice. We need to take time to recognize that there are small things in life, just like you said, even if it's just a few seconds to yourself, we need to take the time to notice the little things. And that is what your book did for me. Denise was so kind to send me a copy of her book, and I read it probably 10 times. And it just the little moments, those little things, the wind in your feeling the wind as it blows on your face, feeling the sun warm on your skin, noticing the trees as they blow in the wind. And I can tell you honestly, I have taken time to do that over the past few weeks, and it has been life-changing. I sit out on my front porch and I watch TV, but I've taken time in the evening as the sun's going down to turn it off and put my phone away. And I think that that is so distracting because we just don't have time for ourselves, because we're constantly, just like you said in those sessions, we're go, 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 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes. And sometimes you don't even have time to go to the bathroom, let alone
Yes.
take that time to be mindful. So what does when you tell people, when you said earlier, you said I've got to practice what I preach. What
Hmm.
does mindfulness mean to you?
So, what it means, mindfulness to me, is understanding that I may be going through a rough day or maybe even having a good day, but you need to take time to appreciate. So it's all about appreciation
Mhm.
of being here in
Right.
this moment, like us together, being in the moment. And that is what I think mindfulness is, knowing that you only have this moment and what you do with it matters. And then when you get to the next moment, at least you made a conscious effort of being mindful of what you did in the past moments.
Wow. And we don't do that because we're moving from one thing to the next thing to the next thing to the next thing, and I'm a check boxer. I write things down and I check it off. And I check it off. Like today in my planner, I have recording with Denise Cesare. And when I finish, I'm going to open my planner and I'm going to check it off. And it's going to give me such peace to know that I had a task and I completed it. And then I'm on to the next thing. But I'd already completed 5 things on my planner today. And you're right, it's the time. It's taking the time to recognize those small moments. Um, as a speech pathologist, we know the importance. Our jobs obviously are to help people communicate. And when you think speech pathology, you think with your voice, but we're not always communicating with our voice. We're communicating with our actions. We're communicating with our expressions. We're communicating, sometimes we're teaching kids to communicate with augmentative communication devices, pictures, sign language. Communication is not just with your voice. You are a speech language pathologist and you were in a devastating car accident in 2006 and you lost your voice. Let's talk about what that did to you personally and what that did to you professionally and how it changed your perspective in working and serving the students that you serve.
So the accident, it didn't happen immediate. And, as being speech pathologists, we know more than, we studied the whole physiology of the anatomy, and we know a lot more. But when it happened, it was happening gradually. So it did affect me because it affected my, the seatbelt went across me. So, it didn't happen right away. So I was concerned, I wasn't sure what was going on, but at the same time, I didn't know where to go with it, like, if that makes sense. I
Right.
I I
And
was a
as
little.
speech pathologists, like you said, we're very knowledgeable and very trained in anatomy and physiology. So I'm sure in the back of your mind, you're like, I know what this is.
Yeah.
Even though you weren't
Ex
a voice specialist, you didn't specialize in
No.
voice disorders. But in the back of your mind, you're starting to remember, okay, wait, I remember when I was in graduate school and we talked about this
Mhm.
and the trauma to the vocal folds and all of the
Yes.
things that come along with that. So gradually you just started losing your voice till one day you couldn't speak at all.
So, it was for me, it became where I couldn't phonate, and I knew that it because that everyone I go to the doctor, "Oh, you have acid reflux. Oh, you have asthma. Oh, you" I said, no, it's something different. I'm having trouble with breath support. I'm having trouble speaking on respiration. I'm having trouble phonating. This is very different than acid reflux and any of the above. Yes, breathing with asthma, it could so if you have spasmodic dysphonia, asthma could interfere with it, yes,
Right.
but I knew it was something bigger and more. But, then I was on the journey to find, now I have no voice and I'm working, now I have to figure out what's wrong with me. And then, you go on the search of the doctors, right? Who finally to get a diagnosis, right?
Hmm.
So that was the first step, finding a doctor to diagnose me. And then was diagnosed so May 2006, it's funny, it's Better Speech and Hearing Month in May, and that's when the car accident was,
Wow.
ironically as that seems. And then, it's just World Voice Day, because
Hmm.
just recently was World Voice
Yes.
Day, April 16th. But I found out about the condition being diagnosed November 2006. So from May to November, there was this very uneasy not knowing what to do, period.
Right. Did you ever work with a speech language pathologist?
So it's interesting. I didn't know, right? What you don't know, you don't know. I'm a speech pathologist. Why am I going to go to a speech pathologist? What is going on? I don't
Right.
know. That didn't even come across my mind at first.
Uh-huh.
So, the place I went to was an otolaryngologist because they are the doctor of, the larynx, so everything, the ears,
Right.
nose, and throat. So I didn't even think of that. And and then of course in the action when I was diagnosed, I went to a doctor who was not very proactive for me to work,
So
which
he
I
wanted you to
found
quit
very
work. So you were like,
wanted
I'm a
me
speech
to
language.
be on disability and look at all the things that would not have happened for me if I would have listened to that. So that's
Right.
something important to say here today. Believe in yourself and what your your instincts and what your heart tells you. Don't ever believe you will have to give up because he wanted me to hang it up. Mm-mm. But
Right. I mean,
but yet he wanted to give me Botox. So how do you trust someone who wants to give you the protocol, but then tells you you shouldn't work. So that was a no-brainer for me. So
right.
that's why I didn't have a voice for 5 years, because
Wow.
that he put me in that tailspin to not do anything.
Wow. So while you're working as a speech pathologist and you have no voice, how did that change your perspective in working? I mean, did you have to have, I mean, as speech pathologists, we're constantly providing accommodations to our students for
Mhm,
those, disabilities and those kinds of things. You were continuing to work,
mhm,
but you have this disability now where you having to then seek out those accommodations to complete your job.
mhm.
How did that change your perspective?
So it changed first of all. So I want people to understand, and I tell people to understand this, but I did have a voice, but it was kind of inaudible at times
Hmm.
because you had to really listen carefully to the person. Someone would have to take a moment to
A
really take
moment.
it to listen to me, and not many people take moments. So that's another thing. There's keys to all of why this became 360. Um, so yes, I had to recognize and come to terms with the fact that I have a disability.
Right. Yeah.
And I needed to be an advocate. But all along, I was always a strong advocate for my students. I would go to bed. I would just, it didn't matter. My students were the most important to me. Even if I got in trouble, I didn't care because this is the right thing. You could say what you want, but I know what the student needs and they're supposed to follow what their needs are. But when you come to an adult who has a disability, the whole nucleus of a system doesn't even know what to do with that. They don't even know what does this mean. So what happened was I had to then become my own advocate, and I had to fight for my job and being what I was doing and not giving up, knowing that I would be able to provide services. So I want to state if I thought I wasn't able to provide
Quality
services for my
services.
quality services, but when I did dug deeper, I found, there was many ways to, now more than ever. Back then, 2006, it wasn't. The
Right.
phones were not. There was no texting.
Right.
That was challenging. When finally texting came to be, that was a miracle.
I know.
Um, but I had to seek it out and figure it out myself. So that was so you I think it brought to light in me the parents trying to advocate for their children. How
Mhm.
do I help them more when I don't even know what they're going through?
Right.
And so what did become even more enlightenment for me is that I had a disability, they had a disability, and we related to each other differently.
Wow.
The students and we had a different bond.
Did they show that empathy towards you? Did they understand that your voice was different?
Not only did they understand that my voice was different, when I finally did get the injections and my voice came back, one of my students said, "I want that other voice." That's how much they love. I'm gonna
Wow.
cry now.
Oh,
It brings me back because sometimes you're not always thinking of all these things that you've gone through, but she accepted the acceptance of what people have to learn, that she accepted me and learned from me no matter how my voice sounded, because love is love. Uh,
right.
You learn through love. So it just, it was a challenge, but such a learning experience
And
for me.
probably a different perspective. I was just thinking, when we're working with our students who have articulation disorders and they can't pronounce certain sounds or certain words that are difficult for them, and we're asking them to do this, they have to put themselves out there. And your voice was different and it was hard for you to phonate. It was hard for you to be understood. So now you're in the same boat that your students are in. Now maybe you're hesitant to speak for yourself. Maybe you're like, they're not going to understand what I'm saying. They're not going to hear me.
Yeah.
It's going to be harder. So now you see what it's like. And I had that epiphany with some of my bilingual students. I'm like, I asked them to say watermelon and I'm like, it's easy for me, right?
Yeah.
Popsicle,
Yeah.
blueberry. And then they'll come in and give me these long Spanish words to say.
Hmm.
And I found myself saying, I'm not even going to
I
try that. And I
no.
thought, well, if I'm intimidated to try to
Mhm.
say this long Spanish, maybe dish that they've cooked with their family at home, why would they not be intimidated as well to say the words I'm asking them to say? So it really changed my perspective, and I had a lot more respect for when I asked them to say a sound or a word and they're hesitant. I'm like, it's just because it's easy for me doesn't mean that it's easy for them.
And I wanna give you a side note about that student. She was apraxic and nonverbal for many, many years. So imagine the 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 brain her brain was so really intact, people didn't even realize at times they would kinda, like, write her off that she didn't know what was going on, but she
Mhm.
certainly knew. That's another thing that people should really take from this. She certainly knew what was going on, almost like me when I would walk through the hallway and a teacher would say, "Oh, she still has no voice?" And I'd look and go, "And I could still hear you."
Right.
Like,
I'm
so,
right here.
I'm here, hello. So that goes to show you for the students who really they wouldn't answer back. Like, I was able to say to the teacher, "I can hear you." The
Right.
students can't do that.
Right. They
Oh,
don't know
yeah,
how to
so
do
she was a
that.
praxic. How smart was she to really recognize? And that's why the other voice, whatever, she was so disappointed. I'm like, "Don't be disappointed, you can hear me either way. I can't bring that other voice back, maybe when the Botox wears off, but it's okay."
Wow.
That was, so beautiful.
You had that accident in 2006. You were on this journey. How long did it ta you said it took about how long did it take you to get your voice back?
So I got my voice back in August 2011.
Okay, so about 5 years. Wow. So 5 years you struggled with this. And was it in that moment you talked we talked about this book, Moments in Motion with Love. It is so I don't even know a true word to describe it. And inspiring is not even the right word. I don't know. It's poignant. It's beautiful. It is so gentle. I mean, those are words that I would use to describe it. You said that the book came to you during the pandemic.
During the
So
pandemic.
let's talk about what happened during the pandemic. So I know that one of the things that you're big on is just the mental health awareness, not only for the students that you serve, but for yourself as well. So I think that, and I've said this before, we're going to see the effects of that pandemic for many, many years to come on these children because it was such a very, I mean, it was something that none of us had ever been through. We didn't have, no one had experience to draw from to say, oh, well, the last time this happened, we did A, B, and C because it had never happened before. What kind of impacts did you see on the mental health of not only students, but yourself and the profession? I mean, we could talk an hour about that. Just
Mhm.
the effects of the mental health on everyone involved and how you came to write this beautiful book that is just amazing.
Before I answer your question, I am so grateful to you for really seeing the book for what it is because it truly is a soothing balm for the mind, body, and spirit, and for, that's one thing. So let's talk about the pandemic. Of course, we all went on a lockdown, right? March, everyone out of school, kicked
Right.
everybody out of school. March, April, May, we're virtually online. Now
Mhm.
we have students that have difficulty communicating.
Right.
How are they going to come onto a computer? People were taking their laptop into the bathroom. It was just a whole free for all.
It was a whole thing.
It was
I
a
mean, it
whole thing.
it was a whole
Yes,
thing,
it
that
was a
is for
whole
sure.
thing, and there were amazing things that came out of it, like learning having the parents learn what we do. The
Mhm.
parents that were truly interested learned exactly what we do, and it made things, like, so awakening for them, such an awakening to know what their students could their children could do.
Right, and
Um
I had some parents that would sit right alongside their student
Exactly.
at the kitchen table when they had their speech sessions, and it was amazing,
Amazing.
and they would ask questions, and they would listen, and they would do those things when we were out of speech, and so
Exactly.
you're right, that was
That
one
was
good
an
thing,
amazing part
but
of it.
not all parents were that
No, no.
invested.
Those are the ones that were taking it into the bathroom and like, "Shut the camera off, go shut it down." But what I wanna say, so March, was like this, everybody didn't even know what was going on, but by May, I actually saw the disconnect in their eyes.
Mhm.
I saw that they didn't even wanna be, and this was only 3, like, March, April, May.
Right.
They didn't even wanna be bothered. Like, I did do fun things to keep them activated and what have you, but I was so lost with what am I going to do?
That's what I
What
was gonna say, we were all
we
thrown in, and I work virtually now, and I'm much more. I have a lot better knowledge of what I'm supposed to
Mhm.
do, and it makes my job really easy,
Yeah,
but in
but back
March of
then,
2020, it was like, "Woo."
they I always say because, the teachers had a different role, they didn't have to
Mhm.
go on right away, but as speech language pathologists, we're like, "Throw an airplane in the air and fly it and just go." Just
Right.
throw it up and just
Yes.
fly. And
Go.
we're like,
Do it.
okay," and we did it because we are doers. But that night in May, it's funny that May is coming around a lot. May, I went to sleep I felt lost because I knew, I'm like, they're so lost. I had one student crying that he couldn't take it and was crying with his mother there. And I went to sleep that night and I prayed. I said, "Please, God, help me help these students because I don't know what to do myself." And I woke up out of my sleep with the book.
Wow.
Now, could I have ignored that? Yes, but it was so strong I couldn't ignore it. So
Profound.
there was no way I could ignore it. But I didn't have a pen or a paper, so thank goodness we have phones because then I started chick 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 typing it into my phone or saying it. I don't even. I remember I was feverishly doing something to get it down. But at that time, I was in the process of I met with a publisher because I've had this journey of feeling, lost myself right before this all happened to write a prescriptive narrative for adults,
Mhm.
how to get through things. So I was already like in the process of that.
Mhm.
And I, after I wrote it, I woke my husband up. I'm like, I wrote a book. He's like, what? Like, just
What?
listen. Please just listen.
You were asleep. How did you write a book in your sleep?
You're like, "What are you talking about again?" Because I do these things, and he's like, "What?" I said, "Just listen." So he listens, half, he's sleeping, then he goes, "Read that again." He's like, "Oh." He went like, "Oh." He went, "Oh." So I was like, always good. From you in your sleep, always good. I feverishly text the publisher and I'd say, we got to switch gears. I think this one needs to be published right now. Can I tell you? She called me up and she's like, "What? What's Denise? What?" I read it to her. And she's like, she started crying too. And then one person that really, really put into motion that I should be doing this. My son was in college at the time, and they were all in lockdown in college.
Mhm.
And he FaceTimes with me, and I said, "Can I read something to you? This happened to me. This is a book that I want to publish. Would you please just listen?" And when I read it, he started crying.
Oh.
So that's how lost they all, you know, this book taps into your inner child. That's
Mhm.
what it's there to heal, your inner child. So when he started just organically crying, not crying, oh, like he was sensitive, it just hit him.
Emotional.
Emotional hit him. And I said, "Oh, there's my answer."
That's
And
it.
I then proceeded to continue to go on that journey of publishing the book. So, so May 2020, the book came out. February 2021. It didn't have to be. She always says that my publisher always says to me, "You're the only book I didn't have to edit."
Wow.
That's something to be said. That it was like given. It was a given.
I can see that because it's just I don't you guys have got to go get the book because it's just so it brings you to a point where and it's very short. It's a very quick read. It's not a novel. Um, the colors are beautiful. It's soothing. It's calming, but it just makes you think there are so many moments that we're missing. And we're missing them because we're constantly, as speech pathologists, we're constantly on the go. We're constantly moving from one thing to the next. But we're also missing them because of the phones.
Yeah.
Because if we're not working, I find myself with the TV on and also on my phone at the same time. There's no way I'm getting anything from either of those things. I'm just keeping myself busy. And how to take that time to step away and notice that it's almost like, the God winks, where you see these things every day that happen to you, and you're like, that's a good thing. This is a good thing. We also had a guest on a few weeks ago, Michelle Winter, and she does the social thinking methodology. And she said that research has shown that people do not bond over wonderful, happy things. You bond over bitching to people and complaining because we don't communicate the wonderful things that happen to us like we would communicate the bad things. So I would challenge everyone listening, start sharing the good things. How did it make you feel when you walked outside and the wind was blowing? It's been thundering and lightning at my house. I'm in Mississippi, so we've having terrible thunderstorms. But just taking the time to hear that rain and watch it fall and listen to the thunder and listen to nature and just bring yourself to a place where you can be at peace and at calm. Because when you get yourself to that point, you can give so much more to the students that you serve, right?
Yes.
And
Exactly.
that's what this book did. It was just like there are so many amazing, beautiful things in the world that we're all missing. And I think that mindfulness is, and that's something I mean, it's a word I've heard. I know what it means, but I don't know how to practice it. And is it something, would you say that mindfulness is something that we have to individually practice and learn how to do?
Absolutely. I think what happened losing my voice, I was in a lot of mindful moments because I had to get through,
Hmm.
right? I had to push through. So what would happen is I'd even in the morning, I had a 6-year-old son. So I had to do as usual, right? We had to just go as usual, regardless of my feelings or what I was stuck with. So I would smile at myself in the mirror or
Right,
take a moment of smiling. But smiling changes some hormone in your brain. People don't realize. My Mother Teresa had a statement about smiling changes everything. So that's what I would do, and I didn't even know I was doing these things. It intrinsically was happening because I needed to survive.
right.
It
You
was
had to
just
do what you had to
happening because
do.
I had to get through it. But the smiling was key, and there was a moment that I loved myself. I smiled at myself.
And I think that, when I introduced you and I talked about the mindfulness and the kindness initiatives, I think that when we hear the word kindness, when we hear that kindness initiative, we immediately think being kind to one another. And we do need to be kind to one another. But what's more important than that is being kind to yourself. That's the most important thing. And I can tell you, I've had a lot of life changes in the last 10 or 12 years, and I have learned to be kind to myself, and that has made the biggest difference in how I perceive the world. It has made the biggest difference in my relationships with my family, my relationships with my friends, and also just serving the students that I serve. I'm kind to myself. I can't fix everything. I can't make everything better, and that's okay. But as long as I'm kind to myself, I can then be kind to others.
It's it's key, and when people really start learning to do that for themselves, being kind to themselves, I it was a way to save myself. Being kind to myself got me through that day. I smiled at people who weren't nice to me. I had to, because if I
Mhm.
didn't, I would be crying. The opposite
Right.
would be I would have been crying all day. So
Mhm.
that that it was like almost like a balm to put over yourself to kind of soothe or reflect, like a Wonder Woman. We have a little reflectors.
Mhm.
Wonder Woman, we gotta power up the
Right.
the reflective gear, but really self-love. I talk about this. If you see on any of my social platforms, I talk about self-love because it's key to getting through something when when the mental health challenge in this world.
Mhm.
And like you just said about the students not getting through this, there's one crucial group that I say, the ones that were in pre-K and kindergarten back then, that are really struggling the most,
Mhm.
and they will struggle for a long time unless they get a little bit more where they understand about mindfulness, because they went through a lot and they lost a lot of socialization, which is
Mhm.
key to everything. I remember I had a professor. Social communication is the vessel to all learning,
Right.
and they missed that.
And they
And
lost
then
motivation,
they lost
and they
motivation,
lost
and
confidence.
they also lost content, things that they had needed to learn. So they have a
Right.
big loss.
Right.
And then put
Amazing.
a disability on top of that, then forget it.
Now, Denise, you're also a contributing author of a book called Magnificently Made Anthology, and you have a chapter in that book, and
Mhm.
it's called Let It Be. Talk about Let It Be.
Okay, so that was a chapter, the little vignettes of my life, but it talked about how music saved me and music healed me during that period. If it weren't for music, I don't know where I would have been. It was something that really just took me to a different place to really heal me, because music, you know,
Mhm.
just the beats, like
Right.
even like a heartbeat, it does something. The vagus nerve, we know
Mhm.
that what it controls everything from your brain to your stomach. Um, so in the book, it talks about stories of my life, little vignettes, I would say, how music impacted those different chapters in my life. And one of them was, of course, when I lost my voice. I did talk about that in the one of the five stories, but also even beautiful times with music, just have the birth of my son and a song that would lift me up and
Mhm.
bring me higher. So that's what that chapter is about, how music heals and how we need to really, even because we're all about words, right? We're all about the
Mhm.
language.
Mhm.
If you listen to a song, even a new song, if it hits you and you're like, oh, I really like that, I like
Yeah.
the beat, how about we read the words?
Right.
I used to do in my classroom, because music is poetry put to music, right?
Right.
I used to take songs and I used to either read it to them or make them read the lyric
Mhm.
and then say, "Oh, what does that
What does
mean?
that mean?
What does that mean?" Sometimes we listen, we don't even know the words to the song. So
Right.
I take it one step further because words have so much meaning. And if you
Mhm.
notice in my book, I have a glossary.
Mhm. I know,
Always
I
an
love it.
educator
Only
because
a speech pathologist would do that. This
yeah,
is what that word
exactly.
means. I love it. Yes.
Yes, because I wanted the reader, yes, even adults, sometimes
Mhm.
you can't put a handle on it. Why'd she say the word believe? Why'd she say motion? What does she mean in this
Mhm.
context, right? But words have meaning and words have power.
Yes,
And
they
and
do.
like you said, it's not always about the voice, it's about the the expressions or how you're feeling, like the smile, like I said about smiling. So there's so much more to communication.
Right. My mama used to say, "It's not what you say, it's how you say it." So words have I mean, it doesn't matter what you say, if you're not saying it with kindness, if you're not saying it with love, then it takes on a completely different meaning, right? We had a great guest on, Kevin Simmons. I found him on social media. You need to go back and listen to his
I went
podcast.
to, yeah,
He's his, social media president's presence is the singing SLP, and he incorporates music into all of his therapy sessions. He is magnificent, and he talked about the power of music.
yeah.
Mhm. But we can also, like you said, the lyrics and the words. Um, every day when I get up, the first I have and really honestly, and I will be this is completely truthful. It's because of your book that I have been taking time to try not to get on my phone. Like as soon as my eyes open, I don't reach over and grab my phone. I try to turn on some worship music and I try to take time to do my devotional and just kind of sit in the quiet. And I don't know if I'm practicing mindfulness correctly, but I'm doing it my way and it's bringing me just a little bit of peace and a little bit of calm. Um, and it helps me get my day started so much better than grabbing that phone and pulling it
Mm,
up and how many notifications do I have and
mm,
how many emails going straight to your email. I've I've started trying to not do those things. And I'm trying to teach my daughter who's a middle school math teacher. She was actually on the podcast as well. I'm trying to teach her that when she gets home from school, put that phone down. Quit checking your email. That email that they sent at 4:01 when you got out of school at 4 o'clock will be there at 7:30 in the morning when you get there. Do not check that email. So I think just taking a step back as speech pathologists because we do give so much of ourselves. I've never met a speech pathologist in my life that is not kind, who does not want to give 150% in everything that they do. Um, and it's hard, it can be hard for us. And we've got to take time, like you said, to be mindful, but most importantly, be kind to ourselves. That is so important. You also talk about um, the production of yoga motions with love. Very intriguing. I had not heard about this. So
mhm,
I want to know what that's all about because I am also in my, in my mindful era. I'm trying to be healthier and I do eat very healthy,
mhm.
but I'm trying to move more. So maybe this is something I need to do. I sit in front of a computer
I
all day long. And I was talking to someone, I can't remember who I was talking to recently. I said, the first 15, 20 years of my career, I sat in the floor. I sat crisscross applesauce. I was, 30 years old. I could not imagine having to crawl around on the floor, Denise. If
And
I had to
someone would
get
be
down on a
lifting us up. They'd have to pick us up.
Girl, if I had to get down on the floor and crawl around under tables or sit
No.
in those little kid-sized chairs that I used to sit in for hours upon hours, my back would be broken. So I
Exactly.
think that, the evolution of my career is where I'm supposed to be. I can sit at home, I can sit on my chair, I can sit on my couch, I can sit, wherever I want to sit to do my job. But I do
Exactly.
need to move more.
Yeah.
And as speech pathologists, we are constantly in motion. And I think that's another thing
Mhm.
about your book. It's moments in motion with love. So tell us about yoga motions with love. It
Yeah.
was inspired by your book, correct?
Well, yeah, so it's inspired by my book. So my book keeps taking on a life of its own, right? Um, I have 3 different like, I created programs to go with it because the brain is always in education, right, first. I always go there. So I do have, something about, the mind, body, and spirit. This is about the body component. So each page of the book, we could even do one of them if you want.
Oh my
Each
goodness.
page of the book comes alive, and I am in post-production of my video. Oh, I'm in the book. You see me in the book. Yeah, it
I
is
love it.
amazing.
Oh, I can't wait, Denise.
Yeah,
I'm so
it's
excited.
amazing. So what happens is each page there's 11. So yoga, it's yoga motions and love. It's inspired by yoga, but it's something that everyone can do because I wanted to make it for all. If you're in a wheelchair, if you're in a hospital bed, if you can't move so much, if you're my age and I can move, but I can't, but I gotta have some movement in me, right?
Right. Can't
If
we can't move like we used to be able to
no,
move. That's for
exactly.
sure.
Or if you feel challenged by yoga, because some people hear yoga and you think you have to your practice. So that's what's about yoga, and that's the beauty of it. So that's why I called it yoga motions or movements. So some of them are movements, some of them there's two that are like motions that you just take more heed of what the motion means, right?
Mhm.
So we have something to do with you. It's called the butterfly. You know, the butterflies on your shoulder. Feel it, right? So
Yeah.
you always, if you're sitting, because we're sitting, can you want to do it with
Mhm.
me? Do you
Yeah,
mind?
sure, I'd
Okay.
love to.
So you're sitting and you got to feel your feet on the ground.
Okay, let me
You could
skip
do
back a
this
little bit.
standing as well, but we're going to do it sitting because we're sitting.
Okay,
So what we do is we put our hands on our shoulders like we're butterflies,
okay.
and you feel it, you tap because this tactile to feel. Then you go on to lift up and bring your wings. And again, and one more time, and butterfly wings down.
And this is something you can do with your kids in therapy. They will love it.
And it's simplistic, and you repeat it 3 times. But did you feel like in that brief second how much opening just happened?
Yes, it
Breath
just
support,
yes, and the blood's
everything,
flowing, everything is
everything.
moving.
And you
Yeah, it
repeat
just
that
wakes you up.
just in that mini mindful moment.
Yes, and those are the mindful moments that we can give to our kids every
Mhm.
day.
So that's just one of them, but I have, of course, you've read the book. So there's the kite motion, there's the rainbow moments, there's the
Oh.
all of those awesome things, the windy moment, the sunshine moments. We do a
Denise,
pose or a movement to each one of those pages.
that is amazing, I can't wait. When is it coming out?
So, like I said, it's in post production. I already filmed it. So we're waiting to get the editing done. And then it's gonna be, I hope my wish is to be licensed in different places, schools, and to be licensed in hospitals where children who really need, they only live moment by moment. We don't think about that.
Mhm,
There's children, and they're so joyful, even though they're struggling. As adults, we
mhm.
could get grouchy and moody, and children have the gift of really understanding the moment. They
And
don't get
innocence, just
they're
in the
innocent. They don't get
innocence.
caught up in what's next. So
Mhm,
that's not that that's a gift that they have, and we could learn from that. But I want to be able to touch everybody with this because, like I said, it could be tough. And in the schools, what I want to say in the schools, I remember this. Like no, like this is something important. I would see teachers putting a video on for the kids to do it. You have to do it. You need it, honey.
right.
You're letting
You
that
need
you need
right,
it more than them. You don't
right.
put it on, do it. But mine is so simple that they won't feel like it's another thing they have to do. As I did that purposefully because it's not like, oh, what I got to do now? What's on my checklist? I got to do
Right.
something else in the classroom. What do you want me to do now? So I'll just plop it on and just do something else. No, this is for you even more than the students.
Mhm.
And like I said, like you said, take one of them. Well, how long did it take us to do that one thing?
In just a few seconds.
A few seconds, and we didn't even do the full 3 like that I do,
Right.
but look how I feel better just from doing that.
And I think that with your book as well, it was so profound for me as an adult who has, fully developed, executive functioning skills,
Mhm,
but it can also be so helpful. And I think it would be just as profound for a 6-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 15-year-old. And I think they're going to look at it a little bit differently, but
mhm,
just learning and teaching them, because again, those are things that we have to teach them. We have to
mhm,
teach them to be mindful. We have to teach them how to enjoy the small things. And I know we do that in our therapy sessions when they
mhm,
master a sound or when they master a concept, and we're always praising them for all of these little things that they're
mhm,
accomplishing and working on. But there are other things that we can incorporate into our therapy sessions that are not only going to help our students that we serve, but more importantly, they're going to help us. They're going to get us off on the right foot for our
mhm,
days. Denise, this has been amazing. I always ask my guests advice. You're a speech pathologist. You're like me. We've got about
yeah.
the same amount of years under our belt. We're seasoned. Um, how do you how do you keep yourself grounded after experiencing the things that you've experienced? And what advice would you have for speech language pathologists who are new to the career and how to not experience that burnout and how to incorporate these things into their daily sessions?
So, yes, we're seasons, but I wanna talk to the newbies because they come in and they're scared, they don't know what to do, but they've been trained. They should believe in themselves and
Mhm.
always know that your training is you're well trained and never
Right.
forget that. Sometimes in a school, when you're in a school, they don't realize how much training we are speech language pathologists.
Right.
We're closer to a doctor.
Right.
So I want them to never lose sight of their training and their expertise. What can happen is, we all suffer from the burnout because we want to do our best job. We want to do the best for our students. That is key. You do want to do the best, but you can't bring forth from a vessel that's empty, like on an airplane. This is an analogy I use. Like they use it. You need to put the oxygen on you first.
Right.
You need the oxygen first. So you need to find ways, whatever serves you. If you're a morning person, like you just said, you started doing something where you're doing your
Just quiet
gratitude,
time.
quiet time, or like I love Eckhart Tolle. He has a book that's so many beautiful books. The Power of Now. Stillness speaks. Still, being still. I
Mhm.
don't know how to be still. I have to work that.
I could see that. I could see you being constantly in motion.
I moments emotion with love. I have to work on the stillness because
Mhm.
when you're always in motion, your brain is always moving, right? We have a
Mhm.
very active brain, but to be kind. So there's three things: kindness to yourself,
Mhm.
kindness to our profession,
Mhm.
and then being mindful of the needs of yourself and your students.
I love that. Denise, this has been so fun, and I'm so excited that I met you,
Of
and I have
course.
your cell phone number, so
Yes.
I'm gonna be texting you. You actually texted me happy voice day last week,
Yes.
which just made my day. I was so excited to hear from you. Um, Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for sharing your story, sharing your journey. I think that so many times we don't, I think when we had our intro call, I told you about my brother who's an orthodontist and had an accident on his farm and almost lost a thumb. And so we think about those kinds of things, the athletes that, you know, have an injury and they're out.
Yeah.
But I've never thought about what would happen to me personally or professionally if I lost my voice. And you have shown me that there's hope and you just can't give up. It's
Even
just
if
been
pe even if people tell you to give up. I
right,
had someone tell me, so really never listen to anyone but your own instinctive heart and
hard.
voice.
I love that. Denise, thank you so much. It has been such a pleasure. I'm so excited. We're going to have all of your contact information for your social media, how to get in touch with you. If anyone has any questions for you or would like to have you come and speak to their organization, their school, we'll have all of that tagged below. You guys have a wonderful day, and thanks for joining, and we'll see y'all next time. Thank you for tuning in to SLP Full Disclosure. You can learn more about this episode and our show on our website at amnhealthcare.com. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend and subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast platform. You can also find show updates and SLP opportunities on our Instagram at AMN Allied. Special thanks to AMN Healthcare for making this show possible. See y'all next time.